Hopefully everybody's day is going at least somewhat well.
Good. You got Jim on?
No, not yet. I was getting you on, and I haven't done his introduction yet. Should I go ahead and pull him on and do his introduction, or what order do you want that?
Yeah, just pull him on and then do his introduction.
Yeah, I'm all professional about this and everything.
Tuesday night we've got Susan Lindauer and Scott Bennett will be on, I think.
Okay. All right, I'm pulling him in now. I will go ahead and start doing that introduction as soon as I get that screen back up.
Okay.
I'm here.
Oh,
Hi,
howdy.
Jim. We're going to do your introduction first, and then he'll let you know.
Sure, that's fine. You don't have to use all that. Just whatever you want.
Alrighty, who we have on the show today is Jim Fetzer. He's a former Marine Corps officer. He has published widely on the theoretical foundations of scientific knowledge, computer science, artificial intelligence, cognitive science, and evolution mentality. Evolution and mentality. I'm making up new professions there. He's a magna cum laude graduate of Princeton who majored in philosophy. He earned his PhD in the history and philosophy of science. He has received many awards and forms of recognition for his teaching and scholarship. Let's see. I see he's a McKnight professor. I don't know how to pronounce emeritus.
Emeritus.
Oh, emeritus. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
At the University of Minnesota Duluth. He has also conducted extensive research into the assassination of JFK, the events of 9/11, and the plane crash that killed U.S. Senator Paul Wellstone. The founder of Scholars for 9/11 Truth. His latest books include, and I suppose we didn't go to the moon either. That was written in 2015. Nobody Died at Sandy Hook, also 2015. And Nobody Died in Boston either, 2016. His radio show, The Real Deal, has now gone video with NBC Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. He also does The Raw Deal, I guess it's Tuesday and Thursday, on rinseradio.com from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. For more on his research, see James Henry Fetzer, Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia, busted.
And we present to you James Fetzer.
Well,
How are you doing, Jim?
Good, Kathy, and thanks for all that. That busted is the key part there because I participated in a conference on academic freedom. Are there limits to inquiry? I think it was in 2014, in which we discussed JFK, 9/11, and the Holocaust as examples of topics that are taboo. And when I returned from the conference, I discovered that Wikipedia gutted my entry. They took out 2/3 of it, all my work on JFK, 9/11, Wellstone, Sandy Hook, the Boston bombing. Fortunately, I had a recent copy, so I was able to create a blog about it, showing the difference between how it had been before and how it had been after, which of course reveals that Wikipedia is a Zionist run-up. They don't want any discussion of the Holocaust, anything that reflects negatively on Israel or the mythology of the Holocaust, which I've done more research on it now. I mean, the evidence is simply overwhelming. In fact, today I just got a report about how the custodians of Anne Frank's diary have finally conceded that her father wrote much of the diary and that it was done after World War II.
Okay, but tonight I want to be able to discuss the things at hand, and one of those things at hand that's concerning me is Trump.
Yeah, I know.
And then the other thing, I got a lot of information in the last 2 days. It's unbelievable what's coming in out of Oregon, including today, Jim. I just a little while ago got a video which I sent over to you, Mike, and it is talking about that the BLM and the FBI have put together statistics of the 100 and some people that were in and they're saying it was 100 and some people, it was much more than that were in the initial march. And they even got their children's names and ages. And I think
Kat, when you talk about the initial march, you're not talking about the Wildlife Refuge Center involving the protests there. You're talking about something else.
no, the wildlife.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
that one. And so what they're doing is they're intimating that they are going to pick these 100 and some people up that they have this on a list, and their children as well. And I believe what they're doing is they're going to get people as mad as they can get them, because they want this civil war bad. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think that's all pretty disturbing, and we have seen a rash of shootings by police of innocent people. I mean, one shocking where this young black guy was just walking away and then he was shot twice from the side, fell on the ground, then the officer came up and unloaded his weapon on him. It was completely disgusting, and we are having these, it seems, scattered around the country. It's very, very troubling.
You know, I had the most interesting conversation today with someone in my family who is working for the police. And I asked her where she's working, and she's in a prison. I said, have you seen or know of any programs that the government has started within the prison system, say in the last 10 years, where they're training any of the prisoners militarily? And she said yes. Now, they named these programs in the prison names that we would think that these are good programs that are helping them and helping others. Like we used to have a program called Scared Straight, now they call it something else. And that's what those type of programs where they are starting to train these people militarily. This is the brown shirts for Obama.
That's pretty disturbing. Another obvious case, of course, is the Patriot Act, which has nothing to do with patriotism, but rather with subverting the Constitution by creating a Department of Homeland Security modeled on the East German Stasi, widely regarded as the most efficient secret police ever designed by the hand of man.
Yeah, yeah. And what they're doing when they're training those guys is they then are going into your bigger towns and they're federalizing the police, and they're slipping these guys out of prison early that have trained, and then they're slipping them in with our normal police. And these guys will kill or do whatever they're told to do in order to stay out of jail. They've signed a contract to do it.
Well, that's pretty creepy stuff, Kathy.
It is. It is. And this person then said to me, if I stay working in my position, am I going to be made to turn my own family in? I said, yes, you will. And this person said, then I quit. That's it. And she told me many others would quit too. They wouldn't stay. They wouldn't do this.
Well, that's good. They're showing their loyalty to the United States is greater than their self-interest. That's very, very good.
Well, their loyalty to their families anyway.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Yep. So when we're out there and you see all these police that are doing this terrible stuff, this is not your regular police working for your regular departments. These are people that have been slipped in there. Just exactly like the guy who shot Finicum. This was a contractor. It wasn't the Oregon police. And they're protecting this guy right now. They won't let his name come out. But eventually it will have to.
Well, keep on it. I have a colleague who's done a huge amount on Oregon and all that. Scott Bennett, whom you might want to interview sometime. He has a background in Army PsyOps, but he's a 100% good guy and a whistleblower.
Yeah, Scott's a very good friend of mine. He's been on here many times, and we'll be on here Tuesday night with Susan Lindauer.
Oh, terrific. Yeah, I like Susan a lot. I invited her to speak at the Vancouver hearings held in 2012. It was wonderful to meet her, and we've done a number of shows together.
Yeah. The one I'm trying to get on right now is Chip Tatum. I He's so hard to get a hold of, though.
Mm-hmm.
I have a terrible time getting a hold of him. Yeah.
Well, I might be able to help you. Give me a contact, and I'll get it to Chip and ask him to contact you.
I will do that. So anyway, I am staying on this Oregon thing until my eyeballs are popping out lately. I have never seen so much information coming out all at one time, which is a good sign to me that people are paying attention anyway. They haven't forgotten. The other question that I asked of this person today, I said, when you are getting ready to transfer people from one prison to another prison, what is the procedure? Because I had some questions in my mind a week ago. And they told me that the procedure is that from the time that they are told that they're going to be transferring this patient or these prisoners, from that moment on, when they get their orders, that prisoner is not allowed to converse with family or anybody else. All types of communication are cut off until after the transfer is made to keep their policemen safe. And that's what I thought. And yet we're hearing from Ammon Bundy, we're hearing from Ryan Bundy now, we're hearing from David Fry, and they're able to get us these messages out where even, I even got something sent to me from Blaine Cooper now. And this was just on 2 days ago. So how is it that they tell us a week ago they're all going to be transferred to Nevada, but they're still able to get all this communication out, is a question I had in my mind. And she said there's only one way that's happening, and that's if this is a setup.
Well, that's not good.
No. So I think that we have to be really vigilant and alert about these things that go on around us. Just like the bombing that took place today, I didn't know anything about that bombing till I was talking to you a little while ago, Mike.
Yeah.
And by the way, Mike, this is Jim Fetzer.
Nice to meet you.
How are you?
And I knew nothing. And at the same time that I was talking to you, I flipped on a show called Madam Secretary. And guess what it's about? The bombing in Pakistan.
Wow.
And they're saying on this thing that it wasn't a nuclear bomb, it was a hydrogen bomb.
A hydrogen bomb in Pakistan?
That's what it's saying on this show tonight. And I'm like, wait a second, how do they know that this bomb was going to come tonight and they're putting this show on tonight? This was done ahead of time.
Let me see what I can find out about it. This is the first I've heard about it, but the idea of a hydrogen bomb is a bit...
I didn't have anything sent to my mail at all. I've checked my mail. There is nothing about this bomb. Only Mike sent it to me. See, and I get it. I get stuff from all over the world, but why aren't they sending out stuff blasting the air?
Is not... Listen, this is no hydrogen bomb. I mean, you have no idea.
Listen, I'm saying that's what they said on this TV show tonight. But this TV show was made long before and filmed long before this bombing took place tonight.
Oh, you're saying so it was propaganda set up in advance?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Well, they're saying that 65 people were killed, that it was a gathering of Christian families, which of course makes it particularly loaded politically, but...
and they're saying the Taliban has taken the blame, but I wonder.
Well, I wish I could tell you more about this. Obviously, we're going to get more information, but it's the great thing about a war on terrorism is you can commit a terrorist act anytime you want, anywhere in the world. The Israelis are the past masters, but the United States does what it can to play catch up. So,
exactly.
Can I make a prediction?
Yes.
They're going to find a pristine passport
Oh, probably no doubt.
Just like 9/11, isn't it amazing?
Yep.
And the documents will be laying next to it.
That's right. They'll have a list of all the participants, as we found in Muhammad Atta's luggage, a convenient list of the 19 collaborators in the hijacking the planes, except none of those planes actually crashed on 9/11, which means no passengers aboard them died in crashes that did not take place, which means none of the suicide hijackers were aboard them to cause them to crash, which means that the whole war on terror is based on a false proposition.
Right. Yep. Well, it's been a very interesting day for me. I gotten some really good conversation and learned a lot of things about our prison system, especially here in Minnesota. And you're still in Minnesota, aren't you, Jim?
No. I retired. I moved to Wisconsin in 2006 after my retirement from 35 years of offering courses principally in logic, critical thinking, and scientific reasoning. And it's an interesting place to be right now because we have a convergence of all the candidates for the Wisconsin primary, which will be in about 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's getting interesting up around here, I'll tell you. You're lucky you got out of here. So I think these idiots, they voted in Sanders, and so, that's Minnesota. They're always going to go as far left as they can.
Yeah, how did Bernie do in Minnesota?
He won.
Yeah, but when was this? Just a couple of weeks ago, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the results right now from in Washington, he won 73-27. In Alaska, 81-16. In Hawaii, 71-29. This is really fascinating because, frankly, he's a much, much better person and candidate than Hillary Clinton.
Yeah. And he's beaten her?
No, yeah, he beat her in those cases, in those races, by 73-27, 81-16, and 71-29.
Wow.
There's a lot to go, but I think he's going to do very well in California. One tab of the delegates showed that Bernie had over 1,000, which makes her 1,600 or whatever seem far less formidable. I mean, once you get that fourth digit, it looks very competitive. And Bernie was here. I actually listened to him give a speech at the Alliance Center, which is about 5 miles from my home. And it was really a terrific speech. I mean, he was talking about a whole lot of important issues. Very, very interesting. My own preference, I like Trump on the GOP side and Bernie on the Democratic, just to lay cards on the table. And there are a whole lot of reasons why, which, Kathy, we can explore to any depth you like. But they are the two outsiders, of course. I think they're the only two genuine candidates in the race. Kasich isn't a terrible guy, but he seems to be preoccupied with himself. And the fact that he's staying in, and I have a report now that George Soros gave Kasich $700,000 to stay in the race, is actually virtually going to guarantee that Trump gets the nomination. There was a professor from Princeton on the air about a week ago who was explaining that if Kasich got out, that Trump's prospect of getting the nomination was only about 50-50. But if Kasich stays in, it was over 90%.
But do you think they'll actually let Trump get in?
Well, he's got to get the delegates before the convention, Kathy, because they want to stomp on Trump. There's no doubt about it. They'd rather lose with Cruz than win with Trump. I mean, it's bizarre, but that's the situation.
And I think that has to do a lot with the fact that Trump has been threatening to tell some secrets.
Well, I think it has a whole lot to do with a whole lot of things, including especially NAFTA and the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which have gutted, the NAFTA gutted our manufacturing and industrial base. This is a reason Bernie won in Michigan. And it's a very, very important issue because the Trans-Pacific Partnership would be the end of the sovereignty of the United States. It creates a super panel of corporate lawyers that have the right to override any statute of law or law of any of the participating nations, and there are 14, including the United States. And that includes the Constitution of the United States. So that if the TPP comes in, forget it. We no longer have any sovereignty. It's all been sold out, which is why Obama, I think, has been so quiet about sending down a trade representative to sign for the United States in New Zealand with no fanfare. And where it looks as though Mitch McConnell is planning that if, depending who wins, but either way, since Trump is opposed to it, Hillary claims she's opposed to it, but in fact she's previously referred to it as the gold standard of trade agreements. And I'll explain why that's catastrophic. She's completely wrong. But that Mitch McConnell is thinking of trying to pass it during the lame duck session between the election and the inauguration of the new president at the end of the year.
Oh, brother. I don't know. I just wish that I wish there was a way that the United States people could just rise up, walk down to D.C. and say, get out. You're fired.
Well, I think all the support for Trump and Hillary, Kathy, is an expression of that attitude, really. Fed up with the status quo, fed up with the powers that be, fed up with business as usual, fed up with the lobbyists, fed up with the corporations and the politicians they buy and sell. This NAFTA, this TPP thing is actually completely horrendous.
Yeah.
For example, it won't allow the labeling of genetically modified food, and we know that Monsanto has this genetically modified corn to which they've added an insecticide gene, so they get a bigger yield out of a field when they harvest. But when it's been fed to laboratory rats, it turns them sterile within 6 months. Well, that's going to happen to human beings, too, who consume Monsanto's GMO corn. And it's also the case that if a corporation under the TPP wants to undertake a project and it's thwarted because of environmental or other forms of, anti-pollution safeguards, then the corporation is entitled to sue the entity that blocked them for the profits they would have made had they been able to go forward. I mean, this is horrendous beyond belief.
Yeah. I tell you, I've dug into some stuff. I can't even believe that we, the people, have let this stuff go on. But I think a lot of it is that we can't even believe they could be so evil, so we just turn it off. We can't think that way. We can't get your minds to go into that evil crap.
Well, I've had tremendous emotional resistance to the research I published, and nobody died at Sandy Hook. I mean, here 13 current or retired professors with PhDs, 6 of them, current or retired professors with PhDs, and 7 other experts about Sandy Hook. We established the school was closed by 2008. There were no students there, and therefore no one for Adam Lanza to have shot. That it was a 2-day FEMA drill with a rehearsal on the 13th, going live on the 14th, which explains why on the 13th we had all these events. When you sort it all out, you realize what was going on. You had a sign, a portable sign, everyone must check in. We actually even have the FEMA manual, Kathy. I published it as an appendix, and it says right in the manual, everyone must check in. You had porta potties in place already, and boxes of pizza cartons and bottled water at the firehouse. Well, it's standard for a FEMA drill that you have refreshments and restrooms. People were there with name tags on lanyards, color-coded. Well, that's standard FEMA. Those color codes designate the level of your participation. Parents bringing children to the scene. Can you imagine a parent bringing a child to the scene of an actual child shooting massacre? I mean, it's absurd. In fact, there were many of the participants, Kathy, were so confused about the dates that they actually went ahead and put up donation websites on the 13th, the day before the event. And Adam Lanza's date of death was initially recorded in the Social Security Death Index as having occurred on the 13th, making his feat in shooting 20 children and 6 adults the following day all the more remarkable.
Yeah. Is Wolfgang still working on this?
He is. Wolfgang has been pursuing his FOIA requests because the state of Connecticut was violating the law by not responding to them. He got an attorney. They've held hearings in Connecticut. he got Patricia LaLorda, who was the first selectman of Newtown, that's equivalent to the mayor of the community, to admit under oath that that sign, everyone was checked in, had been placed there by Homeland Security, further confirming this was a FEMA drill. He also obtained the sworn testimony of a fellow who was maintaining the security system at the school, that it had not been upgraded since 2007, which is consistent with our finding that the school had been closed by 2008. It was in terrible condition. It was loaded with asbestos and other biohazards. It had been severely damaged from hurricanes. There were weeds, cracks in the wall, mold, all kinds. It was full of junk. They were using it for storage, which many teachers have observed is what they do with an abandoned school. It was not Americans for Disability Act requirements compatible for either Connecticut or the federal government, which I believe was the issue that led them to abandon the school. It would have been expensive to upgrade it, so they just let it go.
Yeah, yeah. And I know when Hobig was in the courts, Wolfgang, I did all that. I got all of that videotaped in there, and I believe it was Professor Doom that was working with him then. So we got all the court documents, everything. We did the video in the courts, and Hobig proved his case without a shadow of a doubt, and them guys just really would not move.
Well,
Even though they're caught, they wouldn't move.
Well, look how much is at stake. The whole state is corrupt and complicit. I mean, you not only have these parents faking to have lost children, many of whom
millions and millions and millions of dollars, Jim, that we, the people, donated to them poor people.
Right, over 27. Somewhere between.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Somewhere between 27 and 130 million for the 26 families. So they pocketed over $1 million in donations from sympathetic but gullible Americans. Even the police who were there acting as first responders, bit players, split 2.1 million. Then the Newtown School Board received $50 million for a new school. I mean, they had this old white elephant. I looked into it, and the average cost of a kindergarten through fourth grade school, which was what they were going to rebuild, was only $7. So they got 7 times $7 million for a new school at Sandy Hook. What's this going to be, the Taj Mahal of elementary schools?
Exactly, and they're still collecting money. People are still donating. It's hard for me to believe. And I know that the government, too, gave each of those families, before Sandy Hook took place, they were given an agreement in writing that each one of them would receive a certain dollar figure for a new house. And all of them received new houses besides all the money and the stuff that was going on. It was just, it's astronomical. And why is it that we, the people, like to be deceived? I don't understand.
Well, I think it's a misplaced trust in the media and the government. I mean, people who haven't figured out that the government's lying to them all the time. I mean, Sandy Hook was succeeded by a series of other events that were fabricated or faked, including the Charleston church shooting. We have evidence that the jacket that this fellow was wearing had 2 patches from apartheid states photoshopped onto it. That there's video footage of him entering the church at 0800, and somebody in the mistaken belief that was 8 p.m. when it's actually 8 a.m. on a 24-hour clock. The shooting he was supposed to have done involving reloading would have turned the whole church into a mess. The wood of the pews would have been fragmented, blood all over the place, yet they held a conventional church service within 24 hours. When they put their minister, Clementa Pinckney, on display, an open casket memorial service, the party they had out didn't look anything like Clementa Pinckney. It was much darker, complected, a different build, very thick neck. It looked like a person of Haitian extraction, whereas Clementa Pinckney was an African American. And Hillary just happened to be in town, Kathy, so she was able to send her personal photographer over to the church to take photographs. which no doubt are going to show up during the campaign. And then we had this Umpqua College shooting, which was a fantasy. There was no, just like at Sandy Hook, there was no surge of EMTs into the building, no rush of ambulances. We had one group of students that were pretending to be emergency medical people, and they knew they were going to be on television, so they put on their T-shirts for their favorite event of the week, which was breast cancer awareness. So you had these students faking being EMTs wearing these pink T-shirts. In that case, of course, the shooter was alleged to have asked the students what was their religion. If they said they were Christian, he shot them. The president of the college was so unconcerned, she said they weren't even going to change the fact that it was a gun-free zone. I mean, it's really ridiculous what people will swallow. And then San Bernardino, would you believe we've even found the Craigslist ad for extras at San Bernardino? It says, good pay, food, transportation provided, some speaking roles. The call up is on the 1st, and then you report on the 2nd, which is exactly when it went down. This is the reason why there was so much footage of people just sort of wandering around aimlessly. They didn't know what they were doing. They were just extras. I had a highly qualified paramedic go through both Sandy Hook and San Bernardino, and he just laid out one violation of protocol after another. I mean, it was so obvious it was simply contrived, fabricated, fake. You can find that on The Real Deal. Go for The Real Deal faking attacks from Sandy Hook to San Bernardino. Staging attacks from Sandy Hook to San Bernardino. You'll find it online. 2 hours, detailed, thorough. I mean, a real expose.
You know, I don't think there is a place now so far that they have not had these kinds of events take place, but what there wasn't a drill going on.
Yeah, that's, of course, exactly the typical pattern that they, in fact, out in San Bernardino, they've been having drills in this particular location on a regular basis, which is frankly absurd. The claim was that there was a running gun battle with the Muslim couple. She weighed about 90 pounds. She had a newly born infant. I mean, this is a person about as unlikely as possible to be participating in a Bonnie and Clyde event. So, I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And they even, it appears that the vehicle they were in was under remote control, that it was a police vehicle, that they drove it out there, and then they shot up only the windows. And they had to shoot out the driver's side window, which makes the whole story that they were in a running gun battle ridiculous, because you can't be conducting a running gun battle from inside a vehicle if the window is down. It is not down, and they had to shoot it out. And in addition, they when they pulled the bodies out of the vehicle, they already were handcuffed, and we did a zoom in, and the face was pixelated. It appears to have been a dummy. In fact, they have these new type dummies that look like they can have fleshy parts, and if you cut into them, they bleed.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, these things are getting really eerie, how they're setting all of this stuff up, but we just seem to fall for it every time. I don't know why. And when you try to tell the people the truth, they don't want to hear it. They really don't want to hear it.
Yeah, that's why I thought that maybe the book on the Boston Marathon bombing is an easier access route. I mean, these books are available at moonrockbooks.com after the Sandy Hook book was banned, because it blows apart the whole use of that case to promote the gun control agenda of Barack Obama. I had to find a new printer and distributor, but the book went for sale on 22 October on Amazon, passed all their guidelines, sold nearly 500 copies by the 19th of November. That's less than a month later. When it was banned, it turns out Jay Carney had been the White House spokesman and had gone to Amazon.com as a senior vice president. So I'm confident he had a role in banning it. Not only does it blow apart the case, but I included an appendix showing that when guns are banned, crime goes up. And in fact, the first case that you can see, I sometimes use the image in video presentations, shows that it was skyrocketing. This was in England and Wales. They banned guns, and crime skyrocketed so dramatically they had to reverse their policy and put like double or triple the number of bobbies on the street. In other words, the only way they were able to cope was by getting more guns on the other side out into the street. It's a perfect test case illustrating the idea of banning guns is simply absurd. And now it turns out, you're not going to believe this, Kathy, I've only discovered this lately, George Soros, and Obama looks like he's a Soros puppet who has interfered abroad. He put up $500 million to create unrest in the Ukraine so they could get out a legitimate government and replace it with a stooge. He funded unrest in Ferguson, Missouri. He is behind MoveOn.org and
Yes.
Black Lives Matter, and promoting they're having these encounters with the Trump organization, where many of them are wearing Sanders T-shirts. Now, you got to understand, since Sanders and Trump are the two candidates who are opposed to globalization, who don't want the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which would put the corporations in charge of the world, this is perfect for George Soros because he's got a win-win situation. He's upsetting the Trump rallies and the Sanders people, and Trump knows enough to realize that it's Sanders people, but Bernie doesn't know enough to know what's going on, so he's accusing Trump of lying about his people coming out to disrupt the Trump rallies, but that's exactly what's going on because unbeknownst to him, George Soros is promoting it. Soros is now buying up the gun manufacturing companies in the country and shutting them down.
There's a fellow that you're going to want to listen to. He did a video yesterday. His name is Doctor of Common Sense on YouTube, and he's black. He did a video about his own people yesterday and shooting each other, and I think it was probably Chicago, I'm not sure. And he said, why didn't Black Lives Matter come out there when you're shooting each other?
Yeah.
So you're the one that got the book banned? Or
the book was banned.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I immediately released it to the public for free as a PDF.
Right, yep. And I actually have a copy of it. I just put that connection together. I remember first hearing about that on some guy's show that talks about documents all the time. I don't know. I always joke about Alex Jones. But, yeah, that's amazing. Okay, I just made that connection. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Let me tell you how controversial Jim is. Jim was scheduled to come to my little town here in Minnesota, and he was going to be speaking on, I believe, the Holocaust. And he was scheduled to come into this bar and speak here in my town. So I went down to the bar owner, and I wanted to meet him, shake his hand, and say thank you for having the courage to do this. And, I'll tell you right now, Jim, I don't agree with everything you say about that, but I agree with the right to say it. And when I went down there to shake this guy's hand, this was right before they wrote you and changed their minds and said no.
Well, his staff was threatened, Kathy. The deal, of course, this was the
but he wouldn't even come out and shake my hand because he said that he sent 13. They had 13 people in there protecting him, guards.
Really?
And I go in there, a 67-year-old lady. What am I going to do? And I'm just going to shake his hand for having the courage to do it. And they said, no, he's not here. And I was looking right at him.
Yeah.
Okay.
What a good man. No, actually, Kathy, I was speaking on everything except the Holocaust. I was talking about Sandy Hook, the Boston bombing, 9/11, or JFK, and Wellstone. Those were the topics I was going to speak. Deliberately not the Holocaust because it was regarded as being too provocative, even though what I have to say about it is all substantiated by objective evidence, the International Committee of the Red Cross records and all that.
Yeah, yeah.
But they wouldn't. They blockaded me from speaking. So it's really fascinating
Yeah, they
because,
did.
yeah, Kevin
I
Barrett.
could hardly believe it. I was going to take you out to lunch over there. I don't think they'd have let us in.
That's very nice. So Kevin Barrett, who founded the Christian Jewish Muslim Alliance for 9/11 Truth, which is a nonprofit, realized that the library would be a facility where it could be hosted if he sought to arrange it, which he did. So I actually came in and spoke about Sandy Hook and the Boston bombing. Did you make it?
No, I didn't. I end up in the hospital.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
That's all right.
I hope it had nothing to do with my visit.
No, no. I ended up 12 hours of surgery for my stomach.
Well, you might be interested in this, Kathy. The Boston bombing book has a whole section about Northfield. I've got three chapters about my Northfield experience in there.
Do we? Yeah, I'm going to have to pick that book up.
It's right there.
Yeah. It was
And
very
that
interesting to
Norman-
me. I could not believe that this is a two-college town,
Yeah.
and it's a small town. Two private colleges renowned, and that these people would act this way in this town just blew my mind.
The most closed-minded, the most anti-intellectual, the most authoritarian, the most unliberal. I mean, it was absolutely appalling. You got Carleton College, where Wellstone himself used to teach, and then you have St. Olaf's, and the members of their faculty were both in the vanguard of opposing my right to speak on these controversial. They should have done it the opposite, Kathy. They should have said, this is a wonderful opportunity. Let's send our students down there. In fact, since the Contented Cow is a very modest venue, let's bring him into our largest auditorium and bring our students to hear what it means to have somebody represent a point of view, even if you disagree with it.
That's right.
It was appalling.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable what goes on here. Now, you know, the other thing is Paul Wellstone. Paul Wellstone, I grew up with him. As he's not that much older than me. And I grew up with his kids. And so they were very good friends with my mom. And the day that he was killed, I think I told you this before, the day that he was killed, I was leaving Nicaragua with 3 senators from Nicaragua that were coming to meet with Paul. And what they wanted to do was put together a meeting where Paul could help them stop Ortega from being made president again. And so we were at the airport at 3 in the morning, and I think it was about 4, maybe closer to 5, I'm not sure. But we got a call in the airport telling us not to come, that he was dead and his family was dead. And we knew that he was murdered. We knew that.
Yeah. I was in my office on the Duluth campus of the University of Minnesota when the crash took place, and I was being interviewed by a reporter for an alternative newspaper in Duluth, and we deliberated about whether to go forward with the interview, which we decided to do. But I became the most persistent investigator of Paul Wellstone's death. I published 10 articles in the alternative newspaper called the Reader Weekly before co-authoring a book with Don Four Arrows Jacobs, who is a Native American scholar from then Northern Arizona University, which we published entitled American Assassination, The Strange Death of Senator Paul Wellstone.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people like tremendously. If you were to go online and look at the NTSB Failed Wellstone, which I co-authored with John P. Costello, who's a PhD from Australia with a specialty in electromagnetism. So he was an expert on how you can take down planes using these directed energy weapons, which appears to be how it was done with Paul.
Yeah.
We were tramping around in the snow picking up pieces of the charred wreckage in 35 below zero weather.
Yeah.
And we published this article in From the Wilderness, Michael Rupert's newsletter. So you can find it there. The NTSB Failed Wellstone, you just search, you'll find it right away. And it's preceded by 4 reviews. They're right embedded in the article. 4 reviews of the book, American Assassination. One by no less a figure than David Ray Griffin, who's a leading expert on 9/11.
Yeah. Now, talking about assassinations, do you honestly think that Trump will be allowed to become president?
Well, several have speculated that they would never let it happen, that they'd take him out before he could be sworn in. And I can't say that won't happen. I will say Trump's taking a lot of security measures here. He's nobody's fool. He knows the risks he's running. And it's one of many reasons why I admire him. I think he actually is interested in advancing the interests of the American people, which nobody else, certainly not Hillary Clinton. I mean, she actually is a globalist. She was involved, she supported the wars in the Middle East. She endorsed the invasion of Iraq. Bernie opposed it. The Donald has repudiated it, so it was a huge mistake. We should never have invaded Iraq, and pointed out it was done based on lies. And it's just dumbfounding to me, Kathy, that you have apologists for W and Cheney coming out and saying, no, they didn't lie to us about weapons of mass destruction, when it's overwhelmingly obvious that they did.
Yeah.
And Trump has also said we've wasted $4 to $5 trillion on these endless wars in the Middle East, and what's it benefited the United States? Nothing at all. Chaos. We created chaos in the Middle East. Of course, that actually was the intention of 9/11, which was inspired by the fertile mind of Benjamin Netanyahu to figure out a way to get the United States to enter into military aggression in the Middle East and take out the modern Arab states that served as a counterbalance to Israel's domination of the region, in order to pursue the greater Israel that will control the entire area from the Tigris Euphrates to the Nile. I mean, that's what was going on. So that 9/11 was brought to his compliments of the CIA, the neocons in the Department of Defense, most of whom had come from Project for a New American Century, and were dual U.S.-Israeli citizens, and the Mossad. And it appears the role of the Project for the New American Century was to figure out how to do this, how to create chaos in the United States. And they were very clever, and Americans by and large have swooned for it, although I have done a huge amount to expose it. You mentioned, Mike, in the introduction that I founded Scholars for 9/11 Truth actually in December of 2005, just 6 months before my retirement. But I've done a huge amount about it since. I mean, I've been flown all over the world to give talks about 9/11, and including on my own show, The Real Deal, which is a 2-hour video show. If you do a search on the Real Deal, episode 100, the 9/11 crash sites with Major General Albert Stubblebine, U.S. Army retired, where General Stubblebine was in charge of all U.S. military signals and photographic intelligence. And as I'm going through all the evidence that no plane crashed at any of these particular sites, including even in New York, the general was adding additional reasons why he not only agreed but had further proof that I was right. And then on a subsequent show, The Real Deal, episode 103, 9/11, Who is Responsible and Why, with Dennis Camino, who was the Navy's top electronics troubleshooter before he left the Navy and went to work for Raytheon. And I go through all the evidence of Israeli complicity in 9/11. Is simply overwhelming. The American people just have no idea, no clue that Israel was behind 9/11. It's just stunning.
No, I think that they think it was the Saudis.
Well, that's because there is a 28-page of the 9/11 Commission report where the Saudis contributed money to it, but they didn't carry it out. In fact, many experts have observed there were only 2 intel agencies in the world that could have done it. They were the CIA and the Mossad, and in this case, they were working together to bring it about. Of course, 15 of the alleged 19 enumerated Islamic terrorists were Saudi. None was from Iraq. I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous on its face, and Osama bin Laden had nothing to do with it. When he was first, in fact, he was our man in Afghanistan. People don't understand. His rank in the CIA was Colonel Tom Osman. He was our man in Afghanistan. We got the Stinger missiles into the resistance to shoot down those Russian helicopters through him. And that's why the Russians had to leave Afghanistan. In the movie that Hollywood made about it with Julia Roberts and Tom Hanks called Charlie Wilson's War, they talked about how this member of Congress, Charlie Wilson, was eager to assist in the resistance, but they left out the crucial role of Osama bin Laden. And in fact, he had nothing to do with it. When he was first interviewed about 9/11, he explained that he had nothing to do with it. That was contrary to the tenets of the Koran, to murder innocent women and children. That there appeared to be a government within the government that wanted to blame Muslims for 9/11. And of course, he's not the only one to make that kind of remark about a government within a government. Even Bill Clinton observed that there's a government within the government, and he said, quoting him, "I don't control it." So you had all this poppycock about the Islamic involvement in 9/11. It was complete fabrication. But Benjamin Netanyahu spends a lot of time figuring out how to blame other people for crimes that he and his colleagues are going to commit, often with the assistance of the American government.
Yeah, that's true. I actually got a video this morning from an Israeli person that lives there, and he was saying on his news report that most of the people in Israel can't stand him. They want him gone.
Well,
but
I
he
think
too
that would be
screwed up
wonderful.
with his votes.
Yeah. Well, he's one of the most evil persons on the face of earth, another being Dick Cheney. So I think, you had an unholy alliance between Bibi Netanyahu and Dick Cheney.
Yeah, that's for
Who was really running the government. I mean, W is a dim bulb. There's no possible way he could have run the American government. Dick Cheney, however, and Donald Rumsfeld were old hands. They'd held high positions in previous administrations, and, under Gerald Ford in particular. They knew all the buttons to push and the levers to pull to get things done. Cheney even created his own intelligence team, B, because he wasn't happy with what the CIA was reporting about Iraq, to wit, that Saddam Hussein was a secular leader and not tied in with al-Qaeda. In fact, because al-Qaeda wanted to establish a theocratic regime, Saddam was actually engaged in tracking down and killing members of al-Qaeda. Susan Lindauer, as you may well know, was the liaison between the CIA and Saddam Hussein,
right,
and reported how Saddam was so eager to avoid war with the United States that he offered to buy 1 million cars a year for the next 10 years. And he added, as Susan was leaving, and if that's not enough, make it 20. Now imagine if instead of squandering $4 to $5 trillion in the Middle East, we'd simply accepted Saddam's offer to buy 1 million cars a year for the next 20 years. Automobile manufacturing, unlike military weapons procurement, has a vast multiplier effect because it involves many other industries: leather for upholstery, stereos, electronics, brakes, brake linings, tires, rubber, and all that. So it would have been a huge boon to the American economy if we'd done that. But Bush and Cheney, in their greed, their desire to enrich Halliburton by getting into Iraq to steal its oil, of course, would have nothing to do with a rational proposal from Saddam Hussein that would have been of immense benefit to the American people and given our economy a boost unlike any we have seen in the last 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Wow, that's amazing. And I still run into people that don't buy that 9/11 was anything inside or nefarious, and it's just like the thing that astonishes me most is how 3 buildings fell in their own footprint. That's not even possible. Not even
right. How can 2 planes take out 3 buildings? And it's ridiculous. Those buildings were designed to withstand the hits of even the then largest passenger jets, which were Boeing 707s at the time. They found that no real plane could actually enter the buildings. That their steel and concrete intricate lattice structure precluded it. Illustrate, for example, by Flight 175, which is supposed to have hit the South Tower. We have done a frame-by-frame analysis of 2 of the videos, and you find that the plane disappears its entire length into the building, and the same number of frames it passes its entire length in air, which means there's no diminution in its velocity as it enters this massive building, where it's intersecting 8 different floors, each of which consists of a steel truss connected at one end to the core columns, at the other to the external steel support columns, which are rather massive and imposing on their own, and filled with 4 to 8 inches of concrete. The variance being the trusses had V grooves that were 4 inches deep. So in some areas it would be 4 inches deep, in other 8. And it's intersecting with 8 of these. Now, the buildings were 208 feet on a side, which means that each of those floors represented an acre of concrete on a steel truss. There's no way any real airplane could have entered the building. It would have crumpled external to the building. Its wings, tail, body, seats, luggage fallen to the ground. Some of the engines could have entered, but would you believe, to try to fabricate and fake evidence, they actually planted an engine at Church and Murray that was supposed to be from Flight 175, where Jack White, who was a legendary photo and film analyst with whom I collaborated on JFK, discovered Fox News footage where you have 4 or 5 agents in FBI vests unloading something heavy from a white van, and they just set it on the sidewalk beneath a steel scaffolding. There's no damage to the sidewalk. Anything that massive hitting a sidewalk at high speed would have done tremendous damage, and it turns out to be that it's an antiquated engine from an earlier generation of 767s. It's not even from the current level of jets. So, it's a ridiculous charade. They even left behind a dolly that they'd use to help move it.
Wow. And I know that I used to do ultralight aviation, and I have thousands of hours literally in a flight simulator. And I know for a fact that the plane that hit the Pentagon, there is no way structurally that plane could have made the turn, the bank that they claim that it did.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. But then no plane hit the Pentagon either. In fact, the official trajectory of a Boeing 757 in this instance, barely skimming the ground at over 500 miles an hour and taking out a series of lampposts en route to impacting with the building on an acute northeast trajectory, is simply absurd. I had an aeronautical engineer publish an article with me. I invited him to compose and explain how the phenomenon known as downdraft or ground effect would have precluded that plane at that speed getting anywhere near the ground. It couldn't have got closer than 60 or even 80 feet to the ground because of that aeronautical effect, where 80 feet is higher than the Pentagon is tall. And if you had a plane traveling 500 miles an hour impacting with stationary lampposts, the effects would have been the same if the plane had been stationary, hit by lampposts traveling over 500 miles an hour. They would have ripped the wing open, the fuel stored in the wing would have mixed with oxygen, burst into flame. The plane would have cartwheeled across the lawn. It would have been a huge mess.
Yep.
But it's my favorite photograph from the Pentagon shows. Here we have the 2 civilian lime green fire trucks extinguishing very modest fires. You see a huge expanse of the lawn. It's perfectly clear, green, unblemished. Even Jamie McIntyre for CNN reported that from his close-up inspection, there was no evidence of any plane having crashed anywhere near the Pentagon. And for that, he was eventually forced to retract, which he did in the following way. He said, only a fool would deny that a plane had hit the Pentagon. And after that, he retired. I think he was tired of carrying all this water. In fact, we're getting recent revelations now from journalists explaining that the newspapers are filled with nothing but propaganda. And if they talk about it and admit it, they're going to lose their jobs. There's a celebrated journalist in Germany who's just made this expose, but he knows wherever he speaks. He's been prominent internationally for 15 or 20 years. And it's just outrageous. And Kathy, this is a large part of the reason people just don't have enough imagination to believe they could be lied to by different sources who are all singing from the same hymn book.
Yeah, see, that's what I think, that it's so evil and so far out there that we can't get our minds to go there. And so it's better to just ignore it, and that's what they're doing. But eventually, things like Oregon happen, and then they go, whoops. And
Now,
then
Kathy, anyone in Northfield who wants to understand what happened there, I mean, I published three articles about Northfield that are in the book, the Boston book. So they want to track down And Nobody Died in Boston Either at moonrockbooks.com and read about their own community. It's really fascinating.
well, here's the thing that I caught my eye the other day. This deal that just happened in Brussels.
Yeah.
If you look at the guy on the left of the two they took the first two photos of, saying that they were involved in that bombing, if you put a beard on the one, you got yourself the same guy who was in Boston.
Well, this is very intriguing. I'd have to look to make sure I know what photograph you're talking about, but there are lots of indication of the staging of the
Yes.
Brussels bombing. They were using closed-circuit television footage from a previous bombing in 2011 in Minsk in Russia.
Right.
So they were running that as though it were current about Brussels. You had a
That's
lot
right.
of smoke there, but you had people who were feigning to have injuries, who seemed to have makeup, even including this European basketball player. And I think they like to have somebody who's a familiar figure to relate. It's like Olson, Barbara Olson on Flight 77, right? Her husband, Ted, who was then Solicitor General of the United States, number 3 in the Justice Department, where the Solicitor General argues the government's position on cases before the Supreme Court. He gave 3 different versions of his phone calls from his wife, Barbara, who's alleged he claims to have called him twice. First, he said it was with a cell phone, but it turns out that cell phones won't work at the altitudes and speeds we're talking about. Then later he said it was an air phone, but she would have had to use her credit card to do that. All the passengers, she was telling him, had been rushed to the back of the plane, where if you put that much mass accumulated at the back of the plane, it's going to affect the aerodynamics and the plane's going to lose its stability. But more importantly, it turned out Boeing didn't have any operating airphones in Boeing 757s in 2001. And in fact, the FBI would eventually acknowledge that there was no phone call between Barbara Olson and her husband, Ted.
Yeah. But the other thing with this Brussels deal, you had 2 brothers in the Boston bombing, and you have 2 brothers in the Brussels.
Right. I know. They're liking to play on this theme.
Yeah.
Now, let me tell you some things about the Boston bombing, and you begin to appreciate the absurdity of all this. We have footage where you can hear the police in the background on bullhorns calling out, "This is a drill! This is a drill!" We have tweets from the Boston Globe, a once reputable newspaper. I mean, see the film Spotlight for what the Boston Globe used to be, publishing tweets saying that a demonstration bomb is going to be set off during the marathon for the benefit of bomb squad activities. Another tweet saying one will be set off in 1 minute opposite the library. And lo and behold, 1 minute later, one of these is set off opposite the Boston Public Library.
Yeah.
Now, I'm a former artillery officer in the Marine Corps, Kathy, and those were puff bombs. There was nothing to them. There wasn't enough explosive power to injure anyone. And if you look through the smoke, you see there are bodies on the ground, and they are missing body parts, but there is no blood. Now, as Lorraine Day, who is for 25 years the head of trauma surgery at San Francisco General Hospital, observed, that's a physiological impossibility.
That's right.
You can't have limbs blown off and there be no blood. The blood only started showing up later, and it was fake blood, Hollywood blood. It had a kind of an orangish red tint to it, and it never changes color. Whereas real blood deoxygenates and turns dark red. This is fake blood. Not only that, but Nathan Folks, who's a Hollywood producer director, who was even interviewed by Russia Today, has identified one of the key players, a tall guy in a cowboy hat, whose name is Carlos Arredondo, as an actor he'd cast in one of his own films. And was the first to suggest to me that the smoke hadn't even come from the bombs, but from a smoke machine. And would you believe we discovered a photograph of the smoke machine, which I put on the back cover of the book, and nobody died in Boston either. I mean, it's that bad. So I subtitled the book, State-Sponsored Terrorism with Hollywood Special Effects. 440 pages, 350 photographs. You'll be completely blown away.
Yeah, yeah.
Not only that, but I engaged the interest of a retired professor of law who served as a prosecutor and as a defense attorney, showing him the evidence we'd amassed. And I asked him, what did he find most striking? And he said it concerned the backpacks. Now, just to give you a little background, the FBI report on the Boston bombing concluded that the 2 bombs that exploded were in black nylon backpacks. And in the indictment for Zoker, the younger brother, it states that the backpacks that exploded were black nylon backpacks. But they created photographs, images of the brothers at the marathon, and neither of them is wearing a black nylon backpack.
No, the ones that were wearing the black nylon backpacks were the CIA agents that were in there.
It was Kraft International, a private army.
Yep.
Founded by Chris Kyle, the American sniper about whom a film was made for killing like 150 Iraqis there, often from great distances. We're supposed to praise him for, killing 150 innocent Iraqis who had nothing to do with 9/11. But where we were there because Dick Cheney wanted Halliburton to clean up on Iraqi oil. He also made sure Halliburton got a whole lot of contracts by privatizing much of the logistic support for the military, which is an obscenity. They would set up showers, for example, with a loose electrical connection so that a group of our enlisted and officers were electrocuted, Kathy, by the shoddy work of Halliburton. So what's the commanding officer going to do when it's not done right? Sue Halliburton in the middle of a war? This is why armies have to be self-contained. They have to have their own logistics and supplies. It all has to be under the control of the commanding general, so he can take whatever action is necessary at the time. I mean, this is a way of gutting the military strength of the United States to benefit private corporations. Dick Cheney, I give you the textbook example of a traitor to the United States. But just to go a step or two further, he observed that since the backpacks don't match, there wasn't even probable cause for an arrest, much less an indictment or a conviction at trial. Here's something else. Maret Saranova, who's the aunt of the 2 boys, told me that the images of them at the marathon had been photoshopped, and I said, how can you tell? And she said, because Tamerlan, the older brother, is clean shaven, but that he actually had a beard. And I said to her, can you prove that? And she started sending me photographs of Tamerlan lying in bed with his cat. He's got a beard. A link to a workout at a gymnasium with his brother Zoker. He's got a beard. A friend of his called him after the bombing, relieved to find he'd been nowhere in the vicinity. They got together for dinner. He had a beard. In surveillance video of a convenience store where Zoker's inside and Tamerlan outside, he has a beard. He's arrested and stripped naked and put into a police vehicle. He has a beard. Even after his body is found, he's dead. He has a beard, Kathy. And here's something else the American people haven't figured out. They claim that Zoker, his younger brother, killed him, but he died after he was in police custody. So how could Zoker have killed him? In fact, we have a witness who said she watched the police drive over Tamerlan 3 times in his own SUV, which was what killed him. I mean, how dumb are we supposed to be? This is all exposed in the book, and nobody died in Boston either. Meaning nobody died at the marathon. Tamerlan appears to have actually been killed. A friend of the brothers down in Florida was shot to death by an FBI agent. 5 of them went down to question him, and I think they wanted to turn him into a witness against the brothers, and when he wouldn't do it, 4 of them left. The one remained, claimed he was attacked and shot him 5 times. He's not available for further interrogation.
You know, the whole thing was pretty easy to figure out when Tamerlan's aunt, when she was interviewed right within a few days, and she said both the boys were working for the CIA. The CIA had actually called these boys, recruited them, brought them in, and they were working for the CIA for their college education.
Well, of course, you see, the alternative media cracked the case already the day of the event, and there were all these exposés on television showing that those who had the black nylon backpacks were indeed these Kraft International personnel. They were wearing khaki trousers, black jackets, black baseball caps with a skull insignia, where the motto of Kraft is violence does solve problems. And then, as I've already explained, we have photos of them rushing heading for the scene where a backpack explodes. It explodes, or rushing away, and no longer with a black backpack. In this case, it had a white square on it, so it was very distinctive. Well, the FBI was so upset that the cover had been blown that 4 days later they sent out a stooge to hold a press conference and to say, don't look at any of their photographs, only look at these two. And he put a photograph down of Tamerlan and Zokar and asked for the public's help in their identification, when it would turn out that the FBI had had them under surveillance for at least 5 years, Kathy.
Yeah.
This is our American government lying to the American people.
Well, I have a question. I know that you're highly educated in psychology. What's your thoughts of the way that they, and I'm just going to use the word raided or turned, I can't remember the town, into martial law, and just went door to door, yanking people out of their homes. And I want to say they were confiscating firearms as well. Do you think that was trying to get the people desensitized or ready for something?
Sure. It was the idea of putting a major American city under a full military lockdown in violation to subvert the Posse Comitatus statute of 1878 that precludes the use of military force to perform police functions. And then they were going door to door and forcing people out of their homes with no warrant, no probable cause, in violation of the Fourth Amendment. And of course, then they wanted to demonize Muslims by identifying these two young men as having come from the Chechnya region, which is associated in the public mind with terrorism. So that it was supposed to be plausible they could have done this. They had nothing to do with it. Total patsies. Wow. And it's shameful because everybody knows. The police know. The Boston Globe knows. Get this. The police who were involved there are wearing these lime green vests. I'm convinced that meant it was a special event. This was not in the normal course of duty. There was no surge of EMTs in there to provide emergency medical assistance. No string of ambulances. This is just like at Sandy Hook. No surge of EMTs, no string of ambulances to rush the little bodies off where they could be declared to be dead or alive. Get this, they even would not allow two priests who wanted to come to administer last rites. They wouldn't allow them anywhere near. The number of how many were injured has just grown astronomical. 260? You look at the photographs of those who are lying in this clump, none of them is actually dead or even wounded. They're feigning their injuries, but there's not more than maybe 15 or 20 of them. I mean, how do you get to 260? It's all beyond belief. And I say, if you read this book, you're going to be just shocked. And because it doesn't involve shooting 20 kids, it's a much easier emotionally to understand because it was a very amateurish event. Sandy Hook, because it involved children, most Americans can't even bring themselves to think of the possibility the government faked it, but that's what our government is doing. And because acts of terrorism are designed to instill fear into a target population to make it more amenable to manipulation to promote a political agenda, that's what the Obama administration was doing at Sandy Hook, except it was fake. It was fake terrorism, just as in Boston, fake terrorism, in Charleston, fake terrorism, at College, fake terrorism, San Bernardino, fake terrorism. They discovered after 9/11 that when you actually kill people, it can have unexpected consequences. In particular, there were 4 widows in New Jersey who came to be known as the Jersey Girls. It kept raising the issue of why Bush and Cheney had not invoked a 9/11 commission. I mean, after all, after Pearl Harbor, FDR invoked a commission to study what happened. After JFK, Lyndon Johnson, who alas was the principal force behind the assassination, created the Warren Commission to cover it up within a week. But here, 441 days after 9/11, Bush and Cheney still had not appointed a 9/11 commission, but the pressure from the women made it no longer possible to do. So they handled it very deftly by putting in charge as its executive director a fellow by the name of Philip Zelikow, who had come from the academy, where his area of specialization when he was a professor was a creation and maintenance of public myths, MYTHS. And that's what he gave us, a myth. In fact, he had an outline of the 9/11 Commission report completed a year before he shared it with any member of the staff, and I believe he was involved, therefore, in planning the events themselves. What a perfect guy to put in charge of the official investigation that's going to cover it up. And when Bush and Cheney eventually could no longer avoid testifying, they agreed to testify only on the ground that they could testify together, that they not testify under oath, and that no transcript be taken. You would have thought this was the interrogation of two mafia dons rather than the president and vice president of the United States.
Jim, I'm going to leave this up to you. Do you want to take questions tonight?
Oh, sure, absolutely. I'd be all for that, Kathy, yes.
Okay. You want to go ahead and open up the lines, Mike, because we're running out of time here.
Okay.
Or if we run over a little bit, can you stay, Jim?
Well, it'll be a tight call. Let's see where we are in 45 minutes.
All righty.
All righty. Let me get that going.
Okay, so we got to wait till he gets that
phone
number dialed in. And
all this stuff is so shocking, Kathy.
It is.
And, of course, during the introduction, Mike mentioned the other book I published in the last 10 months, which is, and I suppose we didn't go to the moon either, which is really quite fascinating because I've got 100 pages, 4 chapters on the faking of the moon landing, another 4 chapters on the death and replacement of Paul McCartney, which people just cannot believe. But if you can replace the most closely followed figure in the world and no one basically not catch on, you can replace anyone. 2 chapters on the first death of Saddam Hussein, 2 chapters on the second death of Osama bin Laden, because that raid in the compound was taking place 10 years after he died of his medical maladies and was buried in an unmarked grave in Afghanistan. And then 4 chapters about what we've been told about the end of World War II, vis-a-vis the Holocaust, by 3 world-class experts, and then a chapter of my own summarizing the evidence. So that might also appeal to those who are willing to look at some of the most controversial issues of our time. I am a truth junkie, Kathy. I'm dedicated to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And when I retired in 2006, I decided to devote the rest of my life to exposing the chicanery, the fakery by the government in cases where it turned out that we'd been lied to, and it's just astounding how many instances there are.
Yeah, I'll tell you how I got started in this. I've been awake for almost 35 years now, and doing research. I worked with Bill Cooper. I worked with Fritz Springmeier and John Todd when he was with us. And so I got a good training. I got a good awakening. But when I came home from Honduras in 2009, I think I was only home about 3 or 4 months, and Tom Gamble contacted me, and he asked me if I'd be willing to do radio. I said, me? I wouldn't even know what I was doing. And he said, well, just start out talking about God. You know all about that. And then from there, you can figure out what you're going to do. Well, so I started on RBN radio.
Okay.
Every Friday, just talking about God.
Kathy, believe it or not, that's the first place I had a job.
Where you started? Yeah.
Yeah, the very first one, until Stuttmeyer fired me on the air.
Yeah, he got me too.
Isn't that something?
Give me just a second. Let me get that number called in. I got to do it through Skype yet.
Okay.
Sure, go right ahead. Go ahead, Kathy. Or
Well, we got to wait until he
okay,
gets this.
Yeah, I'll get it called right in.
go for it.
This service is provided in high definition by access code accepted.
And we do.
There are 2 participants.
We
in
already
this
do
conference.
have people waiting. So.
Okay,
terrific.
Go
Well, let's
ahead
get
with
them
the
on.
calls.
Get them on.
Alrighty, we have area code 250. You're on. Go ahead.
Hello.
What's going on, all? Thanks for the prayers. I'd like to thank you all. I mean it. I mean, Mikey, thank you all. I mean
Who
it,
are we
guys.
talking to, dear?
You know who it is, guys. It's Brandon, your little homie here.
Oh,
your big
hi,
little
Brandon.
homie.
Your
How's
little
it going?
homie.
Yeah, your guest is really on the ball tonight. I agree with you completely. It's
Yeah.
pretty awesome stuff. He's
Did you
yeah,
have a
it's a mess.
question for
Everything-
him, Brandon?
Well, I was just going to kind of think about this human cloning stuff. So the documentation that I've gotten into, this stuff goes back almost around the same time as the Project Paperclip stuff. I mean, more or less, my buddies in the States told me when I was a young man that they more or less got these laboratories with this advanced, and I mean advanced. This is all Thule Society stuff. It's all the real stuff. It goes pretty deep, and you would have to know from being involved like I was in the occult, highly. You have to know it and know its tricks. And this cloning stuff, guys, it goes back, well, as long as fiber optics do. Quiet there, kid. I'll beat that little Brandon. I guess I'm not Brandon, am I, guys? Well, hey, I already told that, the truth. That's what I tell. But, yeah, I've gotten into a lot of stuff, and it's overwhelming, for most people, and Mike and your guest and Kathy. It's just, like this chat room stuff, it's so counterproductive. We got to get to these serious issues as soon as possible. I mean, I'm fighting for my life, and I'll keep fighting. And I mean, I'm winning. And when I lose, I'm coming back tomorrow, guys, strong as ever. And I'm strong. And I'm only strong as you guys and your guests and everybody else. It's on the good side, because I'm on the good side now. And I have been the whole time I was on the dark side, but some shit happened to me when I was a young boy. And it happened to a lot of people. And these programs go back in Canada and they go back in the States. Well, I was part of one of those little programs of theirs. And I'm not afraid to run anymore. So I'm all here, guys. And if you want to pop me, get the friggin' line. Because I'm all good. I feel safe. I feel great.
You're ready.
And I'm a strong kid. And for all these non-believers in the chat and stuff, guys, when I go to my little tree hab in a few days to go and get myself better from the scars of finding out this information and being torn apart by my fellow man, I'll be making a little video up there for y'all. And I don't know, guys, it's weird when you get this hate out of you, and I had a lot of it in me, and you start really learning about yourself and learning how people hate you. And then when you tell your story or you give your testimony, they hate you for it. It's like they want all the right,
People hated Jesus too.
Hey, I don't mind that, because I love being hated because I'm different, and I've always been different, but I'm kind of a famous dude here, but I'm just a normal guy now, and I guess like that old saying goes, when the well runs dry, say goodbye to your fairy other friends.
Yeah.
And that hurt me deeply, but that's life in general. My old lifestyle could have been like my other friends in this real estate game and all that crap. They're dead and gone too, and those guys never sniffed a bump in their life or even drank. And they're toast from the pharma, right, and from the stress of life. I mean, that game and chasing this money, guys, but they're so miles ahead of where we're at that no one even has an idea. And I'll tell you one thing, guys, if I gotta get down there and get myself a waiver to try to get in that country, because I got a pretty nasty criminal record, but I've been out of crap for 23 years, and it's like this month. So, I mean, I've had it all happen to me, lots. I try to get popped a lot. They try to do things to me a lot. And I'm a pretty strong guy, and I'm pretty smart, and I got a lot of allies. You just can't see them, guys, and you know what I'm talking about. And your guest, he's awesome. And I'll get off the phone. I have no question. I just wanted to say that with this cloning stuff, you guys, he's dead on it, okay? And this is, you just got to really search this dark information. You don't want to get too much curiosity into it, because it can nail you real fast.
Just pray
just
first,
get in it
that's
and get
all.
out.
Just pray first.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for the prayers, all of you, okay?
Yep.
You're
God
welcome.
Bless you. Okay, is there another caller?
Yes, there is.
Okay, bring him on.
Alrighty, area code 541. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Hi, I heard someone say, yes, there is, and I don't want to cut line there. I think someone else was before me.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, it's you. You're up.
Oh, hey. Yeah, I just called in, and you guys were talking about false flags. That was kind of the topic that I heard. I just kind of stepped in at the last
Yes,
minute.
yes. Brandon was into something else. Just go ahead. What do you got?
Well, the whole Brussels thing, I think everything that we've interpreted from our reality is always from a source that can't be vetted, whether it's the census or whether it's the news. And the only way to vet sources is to go physically and, either start doing a census or start checking with the people in Brussels as to what happened, whether it's 9/11 or it's the Gulf of Tonkin or World War II.
It's very curious that the Israeli
Go ahead.
Minister of Science, who's a member of the Likud party, said that these terrorist attacks will stop when the EU ceases to boycott Israeli products. That's very suggestive.
Well, and that's the hard part is taking any information we get that we can't personally vet as the truth, and
Sure.
that puts us in a dilemma.
Sure, that's the point. You got to put all the pieces together to try to figure out what's going on. You can't ever do it with certainty, but you can do it with a high probability. For example, the Brussels Parliament is the next to consider Palestinian statehood. France had become a very teeming cauldron with support for the Palestinian people before Charlie Hebdo and the Paris attack. Japan had just voted to support Palestinian statehood before the catastrophe at Fukushima, which many of us believe was the Israeli retaliation using a Sputnik's missile. I mean, these people are very severe and heavy-handed on those with whom they disagree. If you cross the Israelis, you're likely to pay a price.
If
And
you
that's a great
cross
point, because-
Zionists, you're
Yeah.
like, please make that distinction, please.
Well, yeah, and that's
We're gonna have
because
a war
we'll get
in
into that.
here
We'll get into that dilemma of like it's the Jews. The Jews are doing everything. It's like, of course not. It's not. It's not that.
We had a war in here last week, Jim. I got to make that distinction.
No. I make the distinction all the time. It's just a question of, the occasion. I use the term Zionist preferably. The point being that criticism of the actions of the government of Israel or its policies, in particular regarding the Palestinians, are not a form of anti-Semitism. I mean, that's perfectly legitimate criticism. Anti-Semitism involves discounting the worth of an individual or the value of their opinions because of their religious orientation or ethnic heritage, and then that's not at stake here. These are the Mossad has become the most practiced at false flag attacks in the world. We could go through that in great detail, but there's no question that no one in the world who's familiar with intel ops would argue about it.
Yeah, I agree.
And
Thank you.
along those lines too, as well, regardless of our own individual religious affiliation, we still have to have some sort of moral code as human beings to the way we
Sure.
treat each other, because those
Of
things
course.
will differ. And that's the hard angle on going into that, because you can get labeled so easily as being understanding. Mm-hmm.
The most basic principle of morality is to always treat other persons with respect and never merely as means. The classic case is kidnapping, murder, robbery, rape, using other people as means. That is the core of immorality. When you treat people fairly, with compassion, charity, kindness, that's treating them with respect. That's moral behavior.
Yeah,
And that's where we always get caught in that trap. It's like a sticky fly trap where we can say all Muslims are out to bomb our children, or all Christians are out to take over our country and convert us to Christianity, or all,
We
on and on and on.
agree. We agree simple-minded generalizations and stereotypes are objectionable. They're a form of fallacy, so we agree with you.
Yeah.
And that's the only angle that I look at it as opposed to, I look at action as opposed to words. If you say you're going to do something, that's secondary to what I'm seeing you do,
Yep.
And the only way to really know if all the stories are true about what's going on in the Middle East or anywhere in the world is if I fly there personally, get on the ground and vet it all and learn what's happening from the people on the ground. But I do not have the resources to be a globetrotter and independent journalist who flies all over the world. So I'm at the mercy of the Internet. And then we see the Internet, and that's a whole other frame of the information I'm getting coming through that. What are the sources? Can I vet the journalist who wrote this? And then on, and then we get kind of in the fly trap, and that's the danger I see of the moving forward with information, but at the same time getting to know our neighbors better than we know the Internet.
Yeah. You know, here's an interesting question for you, Jim, in the chat room. If everything is a false flag or a hoax, is anything real?
Well, of course, all the things that aren't hoaxes. Go to the grocery store, look at the prices. They're very real. Get gas at the filling station. You know, the overwhelming majority of events are ordinary, real, commonplace. We're talking about fairly exceptional ones that are laden with political significance. Those are the ones you have to examine with close scrutiny.
Yeah. And the thing is that just because it was a hoax doesn't mean they didn't target somebody in that hoax. They used it for a way to do that. It's kind of like I've been wondering a lot of times myself in these people that call these snuff films. And are they really killing people in these things? Do you think?
Well, it depends. I mean, you know, some people like Tamerlan was killed in Boston and his friend down in Florida, they were killed. Whether anyone was killed here in Brussels is a good question. I don't deny that it's possible that we get a mixture, you know, of real killings with stage effects. Makes it much more complicated to sort out. Take Charlie Hebdo, for example. There was an X right on the roadway for the right tire of the vehicle to park so that the surveillance camera would get the best visual field. Then there was an officer lying on the sidewalk, shot in the head with an AK-47. It ought to have blown apart like a pumpkin. Instead, there wasn't even any blood. In fact, a witness reported seeing the police come by later and lay down the blood. So, you know, you got cases like this where a lot of it is staged and fabricated, but it's possible some people have been killed.
I go back to the shooting of, what was that senator that they shot? And they were really after the judge. They targeted the judge. But
no, not senator. You're talking Gifford. Gabriel Gifford. She was a member of the House. She wasn't a senator.
Now, who did they give us back? It isn't Gifford. That ain't the lady that we see now. They gave us somebody different back that looks similar, but she's not.
Yeah. You know, I've heard some about that. I haven't done enough about Tucson. I have a colleague who had done work on Tucson that was included in the first edition of the Sandy Hook book about the nexus of tyranny, Tucson, Aurora, and Sandy Hook by Dennis Camino.
Yep. Well, I did a lot on that Gifford shooting, and I worked with several.
Yeah, I agree with you that the judge was the target. I agree with that.
Listen, I was a medic. I drove ambulance for quite a while, and when I was looking at that Gifford shooting, I was actually on the air with Dallas Goldbuck.
Really?
And he said, that thing wasn't real. And I said, well, I was wondering, because no ambulance people that were working in supposedly all this blood and I mean, you got kids shot in the head, and that kid, by the way, showed up in another scene about 6 or 8 months later.
Now, right?
No, we're about Giffords.
We're talking about the Tucson
shooting
of Gabriel Giffords.
Yeah, and so who they were really targeting was that judge, because that judge wasn't going to do what they wanted him to do. He died. And the little girl that they said died, she didn't die. And Giffords didn't die. Giffords was moved on.
Yeah.
And this other woman replaced Giffords.
Well, Dennis noticed that on the stretcher when she's taken out, there just isn't any blood. And if she had been shot in the head, there'd be blood all over the place.
That's right. And all of the ambulance people, no gloves.
Yeah.
That's an impossibility. That would never happen.
If you're shot in the head, you're a fountain. That's just the bottom line.
That's right. That's right.
It's not something you look forward to.
No, I hope I never see it.
I'm glad you called. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
That was it. I was just going to throw in on the
good
false
call.
flag thing, and I appreciate taking the call, man.
Good call. Thanks for calling.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Next.
That was it for now.
Okay, all right. So, I know how people are feeling in this chat room and, and in general in life. Is anything real anymore? And I tried to talk to them last week to say reality. There is really no reality left as far as what the government is doing. The government is operating in total occult, and it is no reality. And what they're trying to do is control us through everything they're doing. Our thoughts, our feelings, how we react. They're testing us on all levels, all the time, just like they did in Oregon. And like they're about to do again, because Jade Helm is in effect again. So...
Jade Helm 16.
Yep. She started already a week ago.
Well...
Oh, really?
I've often observed that I think we were subjected to a beta test, push the envelope, see what the public response would be, how far they could go before they'd encounter a problem, what the problems would be, so they could plan to overcome them in the future.
That's right. And I believe that's part of what's going on today with the new report about how many kids were at the protest, how many adults were at the protest, what kinds of jobs they did. They announced that today too. The different types of jobs the people worked at that were in the protest. And that's all about fear. That's to tell you that they know everything about you and you can't get by with nothing, and we're going to come after your kids now. It's about fear.
It's pretty disgusting, Kathy.
It is. Yeah. But if we don't react, the game doesn't work and we win. That's the only thing I can think of with that, because yeah.
Well, at one point we were talking about the campaign. I do think Hillary is the least desirable of all candidates here, in my opinion, because
Yep.
She is a zealot. She's a neocon. She was behind the invasion of Libya. Libya, Kathy, had an idyllic society. Muammar Gaddafi was a dictator, but he was a benevolent dictator. He was sharing the wealth of Libya with the people. They had national health care, national public education. He gave $45,000 gifts to newly married couples. If somebody had a medical problem, they'd fly the person and a friend or relative anywhere in the world to have it taken care of at government expense. They had a national warehouse where anyone who needed food could be fed. There was practically no crime in the society. He was undertaking the Great Waterworks project that would have turned the northern Africa into a veritable oasis, and introducing the gold dinar, which may have been his undoing because it would have rapidly become the currency of all of Africa. Robert Gates, then the Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, wasn't up for it. Barack Obama wasn't enthusiastic about it, but Hillary pushed and pushed to have Libya attacked by NATO, and they brought in mercenary forces and were slaughtering everyone. All kinds of rapes were taking place. They were paying these mercenaries 3 times over, killing a person that you get paid the first time, chop up their body the second, burn the body, you were paid a third time. They've turned it into a complete rubble. I mean, this was a society that was probably as close to an ideal relationship between the government and the people as the world has ever seen, and Hillary turned it into a complete disaster. She boasted about it later. She said, "We came, we saw, he died." I mean, that's really disgusting. It's on the line of Madeleine Albright, when informed that 500,000 Iraqi infants had died because of the no-fly zone imposed over Iraq, whether it was worthwhile. And she assured us that it had been worthwhile. The death of 500,000 Iraqi infants. Now, these are people who have no humanity about them at all. And Hillary and Madeleine Albright are kindred spirits, one and the same. Hillary's a neocon. She's eager to precipitate a war with Russia. There are many other neocons in the administration in key positions, sad to say. Samantha Power is our ambassador to the United Nations. Victoria Nuland, an undersecretary of state. Ash Carter at the Secretary of Defense. Susan Rice, our national security advisor. You know, it's amazing that Obama went ahead and worked out the nuclear deal with Iran, even though, you know, it seems as though none of the members of our Senate realize that all 16 U.S. intel agencies concluded already in 2007 that Iran was not pursuing nuclear weapons, a conclusion they reaffirmed in 2011. Even the Mossad, Kathy, concluded that Iran was not pursuing nukes in 2012. Just 3 weeks before Bibi Netanyahu went to the United Nations and declared precisely the opposite.
Yeah, yep. You know, the people in Israel don't want him. They want him gone so bad. And they just don't know how to go about it. Because every time they try to do it, the Likud, or the, what's the name of that other? Not Likud.
Well, that's his party.
Is it Likud?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they fix it so he stays in. Just like here. The votes are fixed over here as well. And then they get stuck with this guy, just like we get stuck with Obama and others similar.
He was what, a furniture salesman in the United States?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he's selling good, isn't he? Do we have any more callers, Mike?
Not yet, but I actually have a question.
Go ahead, Mike.
What's your thoughts on Russia? Because I know that a lot of these countries are working in unison together and towards this one world government, this one world rule. What's your thoughts on Russia? Do you think they're actually a good guy, or do you think they're just playing good cop?
Well, I think Russia, Iran, and Syria are good guys, and Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the United States are bad. And that Vladimir Putin did a great thing by entering Syria at the request of the government, of course, and attacking ISIS, where we had been hesitating for several years now, doing nothing about it. You know, the Russians between February 1st and February 4th attacked ISIS 900 times. 900 times.
Wow.
But most Americans have no idea that we created ISIS. In fact, Judicial Watch was able to obtain under Freedom of Information Act documents showing that the Defense Intelligence Agency created ISIS in 2012. It was because Obama had been defeated from invading Syria, lobbing cruise missiles in after the gas attack when the Russians provided a 50-page dossier showing it was the rebels who had used the gas, not the Assad government. Most Americans have no idea. They still think Assad used gas on his own people. We were told the same thing about Saddam Hussein, but it was untrue. And when Obama wanted to lob cruise missiles into Syria, the American people stood up virtually as one and said, no, we don't want another war in the Middle East. So to create a pressure on Assad and a new rationale, they invented ISIS. We have photos of ISIS members sporting U.S. Army tattoos. We have files hacked from an aide to Senator John McCain showing the videotaping of the fake beheading scenes in a studio in Tel Aviv or even Hollywood. The Iraqi army about a year ago shot down 2 UK cargo planes providing supplies to ISIS, and a week later, the Iraqi Popular Forces shot down an American helicopter doing the same. Drone pilots are leaving the military in droves because Obama will not allow them to attack ISIS. I think he's feeling a sense of guilt since he created ISIS. He's reluctant to go in and kill the people that he basically, induced to get involved in all of this. I mean, wow. It's absurd. I mean, Russia, Iran, and Syria are the good guys. Saudi Arabia, Israel, and America are the bad.
Okay, I was just curious. We do have another caller, by the way.
Okay.
Good.
All right, area code 417. Go ahead.
Hey, it's me. Hi, Kathy.
Hi.
Hello.
Nice to meet you, James. I need to ask a question here because a lot of people talk about it, and I'm just curious because I want to know if I'm exploiting, fear factors or what. But with the Benghazi,
Yeah.
with what happened there, and the men were told to stand down. That Ambassador Stevens, was murdered.
Chris Stevens,
and the way
yeah.
he was murdered, the way he was murdered was just, ugh. But anyway, why would our government tell them to stand down? Was there something that Ambassador Stevens knew that he might have brung out about something? Because that was wasn't that during the time of Fast and Furious?
This is very, very murky, but it appears, the best I can piece it together, is that Chris Stevens wanted to retrieve Stinger missiles that had been provided to these terrorists. It could be used to shoot down any plane, commercial airliners and all that. Terrible, terrible risk. We do this very stupid thing of arming these so-called rebel groups when we have no idea what we're dealing with. They give them some very sophisticated equipment, and then we're surprised when they go off and perform terrorist acts, even, shooting down commercial planes. I think that Chris Stevens, from what I can piece together, was basically a good guy, and Hillary had let him hang out to dry, that she was perfectly willing he should be taken out. This is my understanding. I cannot say to be an expert on every aspect of this. It's just the best I can do in response to your question right now.
Okay,
Yeah,
they
tried to smear. They tried to smear that ambassador's name there by saying that he was running guns. But
I think it was something like the opposite way around, that he was trying to put an end to it.
Yep.
Okay, one more question. How is it that they are allowing her? Come on, people are not stupid. The government takes us little people down here. I know we're just specks of dirt to them, but they take us little people to be stupid, and we're really not stupid people. We're well-educated people. How is it they are allowing her to even run for president?
Well, it's like this legacy,
and we're
right?
Just opinions.
We have Bush, Clinton. I mean, how long does it last? Obama even appears to be an extension of the last Bush administration. What has he done that is a clean break? He's kept many of the same advisors. He's got all these neocons I was enumerating in office. I'm very, very disappointed in this guy, because when he first ran, I thought because of his background in the law, he was a perfect person to place the country back on a firm constitutional footing. Instead, he's doing everything he can to subvert it, especially the Second Amendment. I mean, look at how absurd it is right now. If we actually get a war with Russia, the first cities to be nuked will be Washington, D.C. and New York. We'll be in a post-nuclear Jericho-style scenario for the TV series, which displays, a community trying to cope after a nuclear event. And if we are unarmed, we're going to be vulnerable to marauding gangs who want to rape and loot and pillage. I mean, how can a president be responsible in disarming the American people when it's a time of acute need? Not to mention the fact that with regard to home defense, it turns out if you call the police for an emergency, it takes them 20 minutes on the average to arrive, but the mayhem occurs typically in the first 5. So that if you can't defend yourself, if you have to call the police, in the meanwhile, your daughter may have been raped, your wife mugged, you may have been killed because you couldn't defend yourself. I mean, it's the height of absurdity. And of course, we have a nation with a strong defense of citizen soldiers. We could never have won at Lexington or Concord if we didn't have citizens who are capable of taking up arms against the British. This Obama is just an obscenity to me, because he took an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States from all enemies, foreign and domestic, and he's turned out to be the foremost subverter of the Constitution. His executive orders, by the way, are another illustration. After Sandy Hook, on January 16, 2013, this is just a month and 2 days after Sandy Hook, he signed 23 executive orders to constrain our access to weapons under the Second Amendment, as well as introducing new mental health programs at a level of education no one had heretofore ever imagined it would be appropriate. And it looks as though they're trying to design these mental health criteria so that if you go in for your annual physical, your physician is supposed to ask you whether you own any weapons. And the way they're going to go with this mental health thing is to use it as all-purpose. Anyone who's critical of the government, who disagrees with the government's official account about anything, is going to be qualified as not mentally well and have their right to possess weapons revoked. That's where we're headed.
Okay, well, another thing is, I know that's where we're heading, but the point is, how is it that Congress is not listening to the people? We voted them in there. Okay, now some people would say that our presidents aren't elected; they're chosen. Okay,
Yeah.
and here we're griping at Congress. We're tweeting them. We're sending them letters. I know I have, and they're not doing anything. Why has this man been impeached by now?
I wrote to 97 of the 100 senators about the Iran deal, about how our own intelligence agencies had concluded that Iran was not pursuing nuclear weapons in 2007, reaffirmed in 2011, the Mossad 2012. So there was no reason to have these sanctions, which turn out to be a form of collective punishment that is forbidden by Article 33 of the Geneva Conventions of 1949 that say no individual may be punished for a crime they did not personally commit. These were sanctions that were affecting the life of everyone in Iran. They were violations of the Geneva Conventions for a completely improper purpose. Does the United States government not know that its own intelligence agencies concluded already that Iran was not pursuing nuclear weapons? I mean, this is absurd. It's a reflection of how powerful AIPAC has control over the government, where Cynthia McKinney recently revealed that when a new member of Congress comes to Washington, AIPAC asks them to sign a pledge that they'll put the interests of Israel even ahead of those of the United States. And if they refuse to sign, as she refused to sign, they'll find themselves confronted with a well-financed alternative candidate, or, as in the case of Dennis Kucinich, discover they've rewritten the district so you no longer have a seat in Congress. I mean, this is a kind of hardball. And most of the members of Congress are millionaires. They're out of touch with the life of average working men and women in the United States. Where NAFTA, which Hillary, of course, championed when Bill Clinton had it passed, has gutted our manufacturing and industrial base. And Hillary, while she's right now pretending she isn't supporting the TPP, she has in the past described it as the gold standard for trade agreements. That's a very bad sign.
Yeah.
I have a question, Jim.
Yeah.
What can we, the people, do to get the Congress to move and do the right thing here?
Well, it's very complicated. I mean, there's several things that need to be done. These elections are being rigged by the use of electronic voting machines. I mean, Stalin made the observation long ago. It doesn't matter who casts the votes. What matters is who counts them. These companies are owned by GOP-leaning companies. Even the guy who ran the vote tab in Ohio in 2004 said he was going to do everything he could to get Cheney and Bush reelected. I mean, it's very bad. You got to get rid of electronic voting machines. They were used repeatedly here in Wisconsin. I work with a brilliant statistician who's published on the theft of elections using electronic voting machines by the name of Richard Charnon. And we applied it first to the re-election campaign against Mary Burke. Mary Burke actually won that election by the margin that Walker wound up claiming, of 53 to 47. It should have been the other way around. It's as though they simply reversed who was getting which vote. In fact, the telling case was in Milwaukee County, which is a bastion of Democratic support. There was a historic turnout, which favors Democrats invariably. They brought in Michelle Obama twice, Barack once, even Bill Clinton. There was huge enthusiasm on the Democratic side. Would you believe in Milwaukee County, the larger the number of votes cast, the greater the percentage that went to the Republican candidate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it turns out when he looked at the recall election, Scott Walker stole that using electronic voting machines too. So that his touted credentials, as a guy who'd been elected in a purple state multiple times, was just rubbish. It was complete nonsense.
Yeah. They've rigged the vote on all sides. I got no faith in voting for anybody because they're going to put in there who they want to put in anyway. But here's my idea, and I want to see what you think of this. What if we started a petition and we got as many thousands of signatures as we could, as fast as we could, and that petition was directed directly to the provost marshal to take out our Congress and to take out this regime? Do you think that would work?
Which provost marshal would that be? I mean, he'd have to have proof of the offense that was being committed. It's too nebulous in
treason.
general.
There's so many people guilty
Look,
of treason in this.
yeah. But you got to have proof in every single case, right? You got to have due process. You got to go through. You can't be deprived of life or liberty or property without due process. I mean, that's the most fundamental requirement of our Constitution that imposes upon us all. Let me just say let me say two or three things. One is you got to get rid of electronic voting machines. You got to get rid of gerrymandered districts. You need the Iowa model where they have a panel of retired judges who determine the districts so they're fair and proportional. You got to get private money out of federal campaigns. I mean, the Citizens United has been catastrophic, absolutely unbelievable. I mean, if you want to talk about the party ignoring the voters, look at the Trump campaign. We're getting the story every single day about how the Republican elite, the officials of the Republican Party, are planning to steal the nomination from Trump. If he doesn't have the 1237 when he comes to the door, by God, they're going to give it to Matt Romney and Paul Ryan. That's what's going to happen. That's why Matt Romney got in this thing. He wants to run again. I mean, the guy's a two-time loser. Do we need someone like him, a vulture capitalist? He would buy up successful companies and then sell them off for parts to make a profit. He's a disgusting human being. Also, why would conservative Republicans support him? He introduced Romney Care in Massachusetts. That was the model for Obamacare. Actually, Bernie has the right solution to health care because Medicare was designed to be gradually expanded to everyone in the population. We already have the bureaucracy set up for it. It turns out that when you have the government administer a program like Medicare or Social Security, there's a 2% overhead. But if you have a private company, it jumps to 12 because they want their profit margin. So all these arguments are ridiculous. What you have to do now is write letters to the editor, get on the radio, call into talk shows, bring up the issues you care about, get active. That's what you have to do. And letters to the editor and calling into talk shows and everything else you can do. There are a lot of talk shows around the country, a lot of newspapers. Do what you can, or get involved in a political club that discusses these things. If you got a local Republican or Democrat or whatever club, get involved. Recognize these issues are too serious for you to any longer sit on the sideline. That's my answer to the question.
Okay.
Well, can I ask one more question? Because I'm kind of curious. And this is for all three of you guys, because I trust all your opinions, but why is it, and I have seen this happen, and it happened with Obama and Hillary, and then after they had the meeting there with the Bilderbergs, Hillary pulled out. Mr. Clinton himself, the president, our former President Clinton, was asked, did you ever go to the Bilderbergs meeting? He wouldn't answer him. He said, I've been there, but I can't talk about what we talked about. What does the Bilderbergs have to do with the campaigning of America?
Well, when you're talking about the Bilderbergers, these are super rich, powerful, members who run corporations. Individuals who belong to, like the Bilderbergers, include the guy who runs Facebook, Google, Amazon.com and all that. These are people who are movers and shakers, and they like to pull the strings and exercise control behind the scenes. Another such organization, of course, is the Council on Foreign Relations. It turns out that Heidi Cruz is apparently a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, as well as, of course, being a Goldman Sachs person. I mean, good God, these are the companies that brought us the great problems and put us in the quandary we're in financially, economically, and morally. Why would we want a Heidi Cruz to be sleeping with the President of the United States? I mean, it's just outrageous. And this stuff, by the way, about Cruz and the National Enquirer, I've had two different sources that seem very credible that have explained that story was being shopped around for a very long time. For months it's been out there. The reporters have been aware of it. The New York Times wouldn't follow up. The Washington Post wouldn't follow up. But that was being pushed by somebody who hates Trump. It had nothing to do with Trump. It does appear to have something to do with people who are favorable to Marco Rubio, but they just want the truth to come out about Cruz. But that Trump had nothing to do with it. Frankly, I think the stories have a foundation to them, and that there's going to be more revelations. Once this stuff starts to come out, people start to dig in. But the fact that the story had been around for a long time and it did not come from Trump, and it did not come from Roger Stone, but came from somebody who doesn't even like Trump. That to me is very significant.
Yeah, that is. Thank you for all your questions. Thank you very much. You guys can go on. I'm going to get off now.
All right.
Bye,
Thanks
guys.
for the call. Great call.
Hey, Jim.
Yeah.
Did you know that Hillary Clinton and Trump are cousins?
Hillary and Trump are cousins? No, I didn't. But let me just say this before I have to sign off. Hillary gets a lot of credit for championing women's rights, and just as Bernie, who was saying he believes women have the right to decide what they do with their own bodies. But Hillary has a terrible track record in going after women that Bill Clinton has harassed sexually. Bill Clinton was kicked out of Oxford for raping a fellow student. It's that bad. Roger Stone has a book about the Clintons' war on women that is one hell of an expose about Hillary being a monster to other women that her husband has exploited. So she's been a facilitator of Bill Clinton's sexual exploitation of other women. That's also worth thinking about.
Roger Stone, do you know him?
I've interviewed him on my show. Yeah, I've had correspondence with him. Yes.
Do you have a way for me to contact him? Because I've been trying. I want to get him on.
Kathy, send me your contact and give me a note, and I'll kick it to him.
I will do that.
Thank that.
You.
And
thank
I
you for
thank
coming on tonight. It was a great show.
Yeah, my great pleasure, Kathy. And Mike, too. I want to thank you both.
Oh, thank you. It was great.
Super. Thanks so much. And let's hope more Americans get involved in this process. We got to save our country because it's under attack from many different directions, some of which are quite surprising.
Well, if you ever get down this way again, let me know. I'll take you to lunch.
Thanks, Kathy. Thanks so much. You take care.
You too.
You too.
Thanks, Mike.
Bye-bye.
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 Okay, Michael, I wanted to be able to tell everybody happy Easter, happy Resurrection Day. And then I'm so proud of all Americans today. I have seen how America reacted to this stuff they're trying to do in Oregon right now, and they're reacting very well.
Mm-hmm.
And they're stepping down, so the government can't go anywhere with that little test either. So I'm proud of Americans. I think we're doing all right.
Yeah.
And I think, we're recognizing when they're setting us up now.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah. Okay, so, Tuesday night we're going to have Scott and Susan Lindauer on both at the same time.
Okay.
And so we'll have another really good show Tuesday night. And then, well, let me make sure I'm getting my schedule right here. Oh, yeah, and then Wednesday night we'll have Janet Phelan. Janet Phelan is a whistleblower who ended up having to leave the country, and she's got quite a story. So she'll be on with us Wednesday. And next week, Dave Hodges has confirmed he'll be on with us.
Good deal.
Week.
Good deal.
Yeah.
And all these are updated and cozy, correct?
Right.
Okay, I'll get on that. I've been busy working behind the scenes on some other sections of the website. I need to get the homepage re-updated again, so.
Yeah. And depending on Michael Bodea's schedule, it sounds like he'll be on next Friday night.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Good deal. Well, I know I was shocked when I connected who Jim was with his book, because I remembered hearing that I think I heard him on Alex Jones, or maybe Alex Jones was just talking about it, and I immediately, scoured the internet to find that book to download it, because I figured it had to be pretty important if they banned it.
Yeah, it was a good book, and when it was just a stitch when he came here, and I saw how this place reacted. Newspaper articles coming out banning him from coming to Northfield, and finally somebody did take him in, but he couldn't talk about anything he wanted to talk about. He had to talk about what they wanted him to talk about. It was pretty crazy. So I learned what town I was living in and going to get out of as soon as I can.
Right.
By the way, next Friday night, on the 8th of it's on the 8th of April, we'll have L.A. Marzulli on with us.
Okay.
So we got some good guests coming on this next month. I'm very pleased that we're going to get them all on.
Yes, that's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, I will let all you guys go, and you have a wonderful tomorrow.
Would you, by chance, want to leave out with a prayer?
Oh, sure, no problem. Father God, we just come before you, and Lord God, we thank you. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts for rising from the dead for us, for clearing out all the sting of death when you ascended into hell or descended into hell, and for when you rose into the heaven, rising, taking us out of that tomb and bringing life into our bodies and our souls and our spirits, Father. We belong to you 100%. And Father God, we are here to serve you, to love you, to honor you today, and to honor what you did for us with your Son and how he died on that cross for us, Father. We just thank you. We thank you and we bless you for it, Father. I thank you for how you blessed me today, blessed my family. I thank you for all the blessings you give everyone. And Father, for that video I found this morning, thank you so much for that blessing. And I pray that you will remind Mike to play that video tonight and bless everyone else too. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
That video, by the way, I did send to you. It is there.
Okay, I got it in email.
Yeah, let me see if I can just pull it up and put it to the bottom for you so you can find it right away. It is a huge blessing.
I've already got it. If it's talking about Israel Bible prophecy.
That's it.
Yep, I've got it right here.
Okay. Until then, I'll see you guys Tuesday.
All righty. God bless and thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night.